Hello and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I am going to be drafting the basic skirt foundation. The basic skirt has several uses. It serves as a base for creating different designs such as the flare skirt, the 6 pieces, 8 pieces, gathered skirt, etc. And when combined with the basic bodice block, you have a dress. So what I'm going to be doing is to roll out my line. It's going to serve as my borderline and also my center front. If the edges of your paper is smooth, you can decide to use the edge as the center front, but I choose to roll out a line so that it will be precise. And I'm going to draw my horizontal line, which is going to serve as my waistline. So from my waistline to my hip line is 9 inches. I will mark out my 9 inches just like this. I'll give it a point, and then from my hip line to where I want my skirt length to be is 20 inches. That's my knee. You can decide to increase your own to wherever you want your skirt length to be. So I'm just going ahead to roll out my lines, my hip line and my length. So the next thing I'll do is to label my lines, my waistline, my hip line. So I'll be taking my horizontal measurement. My waistline divided by 4 is 7, plus 1 inch that intake, which is 8, that's 8, and plus 2 inches same allowance, that's 10. I'll mark out my 10 inches. And then on my hip line, measurement divided by 4 plus 2 inches same allowance. I'll mark out my point, and I'll do the same thing, the same measurement from my hip line. If you want your skirt to be more penciled, you can actually reduce the measurement. So I'm just going to square it up, and then I'll connect from my hip line to my waistline. Like so. So from this here point here, I'll be going up by 1 inch. I'll mark out a point and I'll extend my waistline to 1 inch. This makes the skirt sit comfortably and then accommodate to the tummy. So I'll just connect it to my waistline like so. I'll connect my line, you see, and I'll just blend it a little. So from my center front, I will be going in by 4 inches, and then I'll mark out my point for my dart intake, and I'll mark out half an inch on both sides from where I marked my 4 inches, because I want my dart to sit somewhere at the middle, and then the leg of my dart is going to be 3.5 inches. So that is where my dart's length is going to be, because it's the front body, so you don't want it to be too wide and too long. So 3.5 inches, and I'll connect my darts. So from my hip line to my waistline, I'm going to take my measurement and then divide it by 2, because the hip is not that straight, it's curvy. So I'll be going out by half an inch, and then I'll square it up where I marked my point, and then I'll use my curve to connect from my waistline to the point I marked half an inch, because the hip is not straight, it's kind of curvy. So when you blend, you find out that the hips will sit nicely and comfortable. So I'm just going to strike out this point so that I don't get confused when I'm cutting my pattern. and then I'll go ahead and label my center front. This is my center front. I remember my center front is on fold, so when I'm cutting, I'm going to fold my fabric. So I'll just go ahead and cut out my pattern. Just watch carefully as I'm cutting so you don't make mistake. So once I'm done cutting, I'll just go ahead and label my pattern. This is my front skirt foundation and I'm cutting one. Make sure you always write how many pieces you are cutting so that you don't easily forget. So this is my front bodice. For the back skirt, the difference between the front and the back is the zipper allowance, the length and width of the dart, and the waistline. So what I'm doing here is to mark my 1.5 inch for my zipper allowance. I'm marking my points, and then I'll just go ahead to connect my points just like this. So I measured my skirt length and marked my points, and I'm going to connect it horizontally. This horizontal line is going to be my waistline. So I'll label my 1.5 inch zip allowance. So the next thing I'll do is to mark from my waistline to my hip line, mark my point and connect my point horizontally. I will be taking my horizontal measurements, my waistline divided by 4 plus 1.5 inch for that intake and 2 inches for seam allowance. That's 10.5. I will mark my points. And on my hip line also, I will measure my hip measurement divided by 4 plus 2 inches for seam allowance, and I will do the same thing on the length. I'll just go ahead and connect my points, square it up, and I'll also connect, just blend in here a little, and I'll connect my hip line to my waistline. So on my center back, I will come in by half an inch from my waistline, and by the side seam I will be going up by half an inch also. This makes the skirt sit perfectly at the back and accommodates the butts well. I'll connect the point, and also I'll be using my French cuff to connect from that point to the point on my center back where I came in by half an inch. This is going to be my new waistline. I'll just use my cuffs and connect. So I'll just use freehand to just blend it in, and I'm striking out my initial waistline. For my dart intake, I'll be coming in by 4 inches because I want my dart to be somewhere at the middle of my skirt, and I will mark 0.75 inch on both sides because the dart at the back it's wider. And I'll rule out the middle line just like this. So I'll be marking the length of my dart, which is 5.5 inches, because the dart at the back is longer than the one at the front because of the butt. So I'm just going to connect my dart, and I'll also connect the other side just like this. And then from my waistline to my hip line, I'll get my measurement and get the midpoint just like I did in the front, and I'll go out by 1/2 inch because the hip is not straight, it's curvy, and I'll just square it up. So I'll be connecting from my waistline using my French curve to the point where I came out by 1/2 inch. Just like this, and I will blend it in like so. So I'm going to be striking out this line so that I don't get confused when I'm cutting. So the next thing to do is to cut out my pattern. Cut carefully in between the lines. I'm done cutting, and I will label my pattern and the number of pieces I'm cutting. These are my patterns, my front and back skirt foundation. That is all for my drafting. If you found this video helpful, let me know what you think in the comment section. Give it a thumbs up and please subscribe. See you in my next video. Bye.